Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Aquaman. So, really, the interesting thing about this movie is just the fact that I felt like, first time around, I probably wasn't really won over by this movie. I think a lot of times I would go on and look at the special effects of this and compare it a lot quickly to like the Green Lantern kind of special effects, and I think a lot of people when this movie came out, they were kind of writing it off as that, like, yeah, it kind of feels like they're going into the same kind of special effects direction as the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern one, where it's just not as like polished and whatever. But I really can say that I think the more I can, or the more that I go on and watch this film, the more positive I would probably feel about it. I think I wasn't won over by this film at first, but I think with more viewings, I can like it a little bit more. Or I can at least like it more than possibly other DC films that had come down the pipeline at some point. Even liking this film even much more better than even the Justice League film, which kind of has a compilation of a bunch of other superheroes and so on and so forth. Like, I would still hold Man of Steel and any of the Christian Bale Batmans a little bit higher on the rung of things. And plus, also, like, I don't have that quick comparison to Justice League Throne of Atlantis to kind of go on and heavily compare that to this. Uh, but from memory of which I would go on and I would usually say that I'd probably like Justice League Throne of Atlantis just a little bit better than this movie because, of course, it's an animated film where you can go on and do anything. And, of course, like, you have the Justice League kind of rolled in there also, but it's kind of mostly a Aquaman film for the most point. But yeah, so, but I can still like this movie. I can still enjoy this movie compared to possibly Wonder Woman or compared to possibly a number of just other characters that are just like gone through recent film, like Shazam and stuff like that. So yeah, like, yeah, very positive film. Even though, yeah, there might be some problems that some people might have. Some people might hate this movie. Some people just may not like Jason Momoa, like, for some reason, and that's okay. Because at the end of the day, I can like this film just regardless of how people may feel the opposite. Sadly. Um, but at least, like, if you guys like would have had my original review and see my original review, like, like, because at the time I just like hated every single one of these installments of the DC universe, and like there was no movie that could come out that I could just enjoy coming from this brand, or coming from DC. So, with that said, a little bit of a turnaround, but I don't know if it's a drastic turnaround. But um, like, we have Arthur Curry, that is a very like confident character because, of course, we've kind of seen any other variations of him. We kind of see him as a kind of a headstrong character where he goes in, and even when he is to obviously be facing somebody that he is to, of course, be outmatched by, like, he is still thinking that he's going to win, even if he's not really kind of trained well, or like he's kind of out of his element. He's a fish out of water. He is to go on and still try his best and eventually will himself to go on and try to make it through whatever he is to try to do. So, so yeah. So with that said, yeah. So the grading of this movie would probably be, like, I would say that this is it's a great film, but I can't, like, for the life of me, like, say that it's like I could probably give it like bigger praise than that. but I just like I would have to go on and feel like there is just better films in the DC world of things. But I can still, like, great is still a positive thing. Recommend to people watching it if you still have not gotten to, because a sequel is coming up soon. It seems that Aquaman is to be tied to some other DC projects. So if you have caught in those and you're like, who is this Jason Momoa guy? Who is this orange wielding costumed person, never seen him before, then Aquaman would be something you definitely check out. I kind of wish that they would have gone on and done the origins of characters and then Justice League, because technically, like, there's so many of these movies where, like, we're in the aftermath of Justice League and they're having to, like, tie that into, like, a movie like this. And I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to go and see Justice League to then see this movie if we want to like go into all these things in chronological order, but it would probably be just best to have watched these by the time they came out. But anyways, let's just go into that double five time territory. Let's just go into spoilers about this movie because it's about that time for us to say that it is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. Let me know in the comments below how you feel about Aquaman. Maybe you hate this film. Maybe you love this film. Maybe it's your favorite DC movie of all time because maybe, or weirdly, it's your favorite superhero movie of all time. I can't argue with that. Like, I can just go on and just be like, meh. Like, all right, cool. Like, if people like this movie, I don't blame you. So with that said, let's go into that double five time territory and let's just go into spoilers. So, in the very beginning of this film, we of course have Tom Curry, who is this lighthouse guy, who of course is to one day find Atlanta kind of washing up on the shores of his lighthouse. And so, we of course have Tom, who is to revive this woman and go and give her like hot cocoa weirdly, or like some kind of brew of some sorts, which is to make Atlanta better, which is kind of weird. So we find out that Atlanta had gone on and left Atlanta and left her betrothed, her arranged marriage with Orvax Marius, to decide to make it onto land to mix it up with a guy named Tom Curry, because maybe she's just really a Boba Fett fan. I don't know. Maybe she's a Star Wars, Clone Wars fan. I don't know. Mixing it up Disney-wise, because we already have a Pinocchio book somewhere in this film. So, yeah. So, we have Atlanta and we have Tom, who are to, of course, give birth to Arthur, and we of course have Tom tying Arthur's name to the legend of like King Arthur and so on and so forth. And Tom is to always want Arthur to know a lot about history and everything like that. So we then go on and have the Atlantean commandos wanting to go on and retrieve Atlanta back to Atlantis so she can go on and marry the man that she is to, of course, be arranged to. So, who, of course, is to have her eventually give birth to, of course, Orm, who is to eventually be Ocean Master at some part of this film. So, Atlanta is to go on and try to fight off these Atlantean, they call them soldiers and they call them commandos. I don't really understand quite what the color scheme difference is between the red Atlantean soldiers and the white Atlantean soldiers are. Like, I'm assuming possibly the red soldiers could be the commandos, and the white could just be the kind of foot soldier kind of guys. Don't really know, but you would have thought they would have sent like the highest soldiers to take this girl out, but that's just me. So, or did not really take her out, but just to like knock her out and just kind of throw her over her shoulder and be like, hey, let's go back to the ocean. So we now have it to where Nicole Kidman as Atlanta is now decking these soldiers. I'm like, you know what? Like, I like this part. Like, this is kind of cool. Like, we have freaking Atlanta just decking these guys, and like they're creating these big, massive holes in this lighthouse or this home. Pretty fun. So Atlanta is to tell Tim that they will continue to send people over and over and over again if I don't go back, if I continue to defy them. So I need to go back. I need to leave for both Tim and for both Arthur's safety. So Atlanta goes back to Atlantis to go and forcibly be married to Orvax, who produces a child named Orm. And we never see Orvax in this movie. You would have thought that would have been nice to actually have Orvax himself go and retrieve his woman to be, instead of just having some foot soldiers go off and get her. That seems kind of like, God, what a lazy piece of but, like, I guess that's what happens when you're technically king of Atlantis. You're going to just sit on your throne and just wait for somebody else to just kind of get your wife for you. Mother... So, Orvax goes on and is to eventually marry Atlanta, go and have Orm with her. But all of a sudden, Orvax grows very jealous and is to go on and is to realize that Atlanta is to have already had a child with another man. And so the growing of jealousy in Orvax is to then push him to send Atlanta to the trench for her to go on, Atlanta, to go on and eventually be killed or to be murdered by these numerous creatures who are, of course, to be called the cannibalistic rage of ocean-dwelling creatures, usually called the trench. So we go into this story, and so and I'm gonna go on and not do it exactly like the film is going on to, because I like to tell a perfect timeline of things, and like Bashal the movie, because it is what it is. I like to show perfect timeline of film. So we have it at points where we have Arthur, who is growing up, and he is to actually be trained by a guy named Volko, who of course is to be William Dafoe's character. And so Volko, like, it seems that Volko sees the fact that Arthur is to, of course, be the true king regardless of him not being in the ocean 24/7 and him being with the Atlanteans 24/7. It's just the right lineage. And so Volko is going on behind the Atlanteans' back and consistently going on and training young Arthur. Going on and having Arthur just kind of complaining to Volko about his mother, or about what had happened to his mother, because she had been killed, and also just kind of complaining about the Atlanteans and so on and so forth. And so Volko is going on and showcasing once Arthur is to become very good at using these tridents or these staffs, however you want to slice and dice it. Volko is kind of doing this kind of one spinning move over and over, and Arthur is trying to break into it using his mother's staff because his mother had left this staff for him to eventually use at some point. As well as Arthur is just thinking, it's like, well, why do I need a trident? Why can't I just use a sword? And Volko is just like, well, because like there are certain moves that a trident can do that no other weapons can. And so Volko is to show this spinning maneuver where it seems that no matter how many times Arthur tries to smack into this with his trident, he can't break through. And so it's kind of like a very defensive kind of maneuver. And eventually Arthur is to take that ability, to take that training and whichever, to use that towards the end of the fight with Orm, or technically Ocean Master. So, excuse me. So, so we go on and we have, of course, Volko, who is also training Arthur how to swim and be able to just kind of maneuver through the ocean and so on and so forth, just trying to teach him a number of things. But Arthur really hasn't learned exactly like years and years and years of battling underwater and so on and so forth. So, anyways, let's push on. So, in the very beginning of this movie, we of course have Arthur that is to try to rescue a number of sailors within this submarine. Because it seems that we have a guy who eventually becomes Black Mantis in this movie, and his father Jess, who is to try and pirate this submarine and kind of take it over. And so we of course have this captain telling, of course, Black Mantis and both Jess that, hey, like, the alarm system for this submarine has gone off, and like there's nothing you guys can do. And so Black Mantis is just like, well, like, don't, like, I won't tell you how to captain if you don't tell me how to pirate. So Black Mantis kills the captain, and they go on to try and retrieve something from this submarine. And so Jess is to go on and just be so happy that him and Jess are kind of working together going on this mission, to where, and I'm like, why are they wasting so much time? Like, there's an alarm going off. Like, why is it that these guys are just kind of like taking this sweet time? But I guess they're just really like, there wasn't an easy point to just kind of break this in or whatever. So Jess is to hand over to Black Mantis. He is to hand over this sword, or this dagger. And we have Black Mantis talking to his father, and he's just like, no, like, I don't want to take this like old rusty thing from you. And Jess is like, well, there's a significance to this, like, to this knife that you're not aware of. And so we have Jess going on and saying that this was like a handed down piece that was to, of course, been given from son to father to son. And we coincidentally have Jess, who is to pick this now one time to hand over this knife over to the guy who becomes Black Mantis in this movie. And of course we have this like this kind of little symbolic sword, of course, and like he just kind of goes on and hands this over to his son, because like he is just kind of so proud of him, and like he's picking this time to finally hand over this knife, this sword, or this this dagger, this little knife. So these two characters go on, and they're trying to, I'm assuming, either take over this submarine, or they're going on and just kind of trying to steal from this submarine. So we then go on, and we of course have Aquaman, who is to come from underneath this sub and is to push it with his strength to make this submarine surface, to where Aquaman is to go into the submarine and then go on and see a number of sailors that are all going on and kind of bejokingly just telling like, oh, hey, it's Aquaman. Like, hey, buddy, like, you better kind of like hurry up. Like, happy hour starting soon. It's just like, sure, yeah, like, because they kind of figure that if Aquaman's here, like, he'll just take these guys down in a quick amount of time. So, but they kind of just call him like Fish Boy or whatever. Like, they don't have an actual name for him. So Arthur then goes on and is to start taking down some of Jesse's men, because technically it's not Black Mantis's men, because technically Jesse is running the show. So we have at one point that Arthur just kind of rips off this one door and is to kind of bounce off these bullets as if he's kind of using this kind of metal piece as a shield. And we have this character like very confident, where he's like tilting his head off to the side, and he's just kind of being very cool and so on and so forth. I think like originally I would have probably joked about like, yeah, he's being so cool, because we of course have to have Aquaman that's like looking so cool. Yeah, like they try to like bolster up this guy to look so cool. But so we have Arthur that goes on and like flings this kind of little door, or this little like this little handle thing, and just kind of tosses it, and then starts taking on some of these men, going and kind of tossing one guy over his shoulders, and like smashes him against this door, going on and taking care of all of Jess's men, and is to make his way, of course, through to get to both Jess and Manta. So, because heaven forbid we actually have Manta's real legitimate name here. Funny enough, for those of you that may not know, because you might not be like Young Justice people, in some stories we do have it where Aquaman would go on and actually take Black Manta's son and turn him into a Aqualad, which that's kind of interesting for some people who may be interested in like stuff like Young Justice, which actually Young Justice is really like is a well put together show for an animated thing. So if you've never seen Young Justice, definitely check it out. It actually is really good, especially like we kind of in the later seasons get some like jumping gaps where there's kind of been some time in between seasons, which is kind of annoying, but because like it kind of feels like Titans in a way, where they kind of have to like have this huge gap of things in between seasons for whatever goofy reason. But at least it seems a little bit more well put together than actually Titans is for the most point. So we have Arthur that is fighting Jess, and so we of course have Aquaman, who takes one piece and kind of turns it into this like metal spear, and he spears it right into Jess's shoulder, and so he's kind of stuck there until Arthur is to pull this spear back out and have Jess kind of fall over. We have Arthur trying to take down Mantis here, or Manta, my bad. And so we have Arthur trying to take him down, and there's some really cool like fighting scenes between this, because we have Manta with these like hand blades that are kind of coming out, which is kind of very, it looks very like Wolverine Origins, like Deadpool-esh, but like it looks a little bit better than that. Like this isn't actually coming from this guy's hand; it's just kind of coming from his sides of his arms and so on and so forth. So we have Arthur, of course, who's telling, of course, Manta to don't make it a habit of them meeting, and so at one point we go on and we of course have Arthur that is to start to have these I think these missiles kind of fall out, and all of a sudden Jess is to have one of these kind of missiles fall onto him, and so Arthur is to go on and start to make this submarine sink. And so Arthur is to, of course, start making his way up this ladder, as we, of course, have Manta, who's focusing on his father, Jess, stuck underneath this piece. And so Manta is screaming to Arthur, like, hey, like, save my dad, like please, like. And so Arthur turns, of course, to Manta and is telling him, it's like, well, hope the sea gives your father mercy, because I won't. So Arthur, or let's just go and talk, let's just say it, Aquaman then leaves, and so Jess is forcing his son to live, and Jess is grabbing this grenade, and he's holding it up, forcing this guy to leave. And so Manta goes and grabs this ladder, is now trying to make his way from where his father is, and eventually of course, grenade is to explode, and we of course have Manta realizing that his father is dead. So all of the sailors are to, of course, go on to these boats, and so Aquaman is to drag all these boats swimming, of course, to get them to all be to shore. So we go on and then have Arthur kind of re-meeting up with his father, and we of course have Tom, who is always at this part of his like I'm trying to think of what the word is, his pier. He's at the end of his pier, and so Arthur is to say, it's like, man, like always like clockwork with you, and Tom is just like, well, old habits. Because Tom at one point was to go at the end of his pier to go on and find Atlanta, and Tom is thinking at one point that maybe if he goes on and does that every single day, that eventually either Atlanta or Arthur will possibly come back to him. So we have both Arthur and we have both Tom who go on to the bar, and so both of them are drinking, and of course Arthur is to not drink as fast as Tom, and so Arthur is just like, well, like, how is it that like I can breathe underwater but I can't drink as quickly as you are, or you can? And Tom is like, well, that maybe that's my special power. As he's kind of mocking him, it's like, hey, do you need a sippy cup? So all of a sudden we have, of course, the news going on and talking about the Aquaman, and so we all of a sudden have a number of biker guys that are kind of asking Arthur possibly if he is that Aquaman guy or if he is that fish guy. And Arthur's just like, well, yeah, what's it to you? And so they're like, well, we'd like to take a photo with you. And so we all of a sudden have them kind of like taking photos, and Arthur's just like, but then eventually, I guess they start buying him around, and you can kind of see like the shots where he's having a lot more fun, and so on and so forth. So eventually we have both Arthur and we have both Tom that kind of leave this bar, and so Mira, of course, is to show up, and of course want Arthur to come with her. And I know a lot of people aren't really Mira for some reason. Amber Heard is just not really well received, and I just don't quite understand why. Like, yeah, I might not really care for this character, Mira, but like, she's a supporting character. Like, she's not a main character of a film, so I just don't. I don't like. I can understand why people may not like her, but like, I just don't really like. She's not the main focused character. She's not Aquaman. Like, I can see if it was like if she was like the lead character in this movie, but she's just not. So I just don't understand why people just are having petitions wanting her to be replaced. If anybody is to not like this character for whatever reason, you can let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll be like, okay, well, that's a justifiable reason. But I don't know, like, I don't think in other installments she'll probably be used as much anyways, so I don't know, I just don't understand why people just don't like this character for some odd reason. I don't know. Like, at least it's not like Captain Marvel, where a lot of people just really just didn't like Brie Larson, but uh, I'm sure that character is eventually going to stay somewhere down the road and like not be replaced by anybody. So, man, is that just gonna be great? Just eventually, there's a reason why I haven't got on and watched Captain Marvel all that quickly, or Ant-Man for that sake. Um, but anyways, so yeah. So Arthur is to talk with Mira, and so we of course have Mira trying to convince Arthur to go back to Atlantis to defend Atlantis, and Arthur wants nothing to do with it. Like, the only thing that he's focusing on is, of course, taking his father back home. And so we of course go on and have King Orm, who is to talk to Mira's father, who of course is King Nereus. And so while Orm is talking to Nereus, we of course have Nereus who's mentioning, it's like, well, like, you know what, Orm? Like, I think you're going on and you're trying to eventually like create a war with the surface. And honestly, nobody wants to team up with you. Like, nobody wants to go on and like agree to eventually go to war with the surface, because you're going to have to go on and convince a number of people that just don't want to work with you. And of course, King Nereus is to be one of them. And of course, we have King Riku, Rico, that of course is another one, and we also have the Brine King, that of course is another. So all of a sudden, because of course King Nurum is saying that Orm just wants to go on and become Ocean Master, and Orm is just like, well, that's just a title. And so while they're discussing this, while they're debating this, all of a sudden we finally have some submarine that is to go on and attack, of course, Orym and Norus while they're going on having this conversation, leaving Volkos to tell everybody that the surface has gone and attacked them. The surface dwellers have attacked them. So King Orm goes and jumps on his massive sea animal to go on and rip through, of course, the submarine and to break the thing that is letting this submarine spin. And so all of a sudden this submarine crashes. And so we have Norris, who's just like, well, like, you've got my vote, Orym. Fine. Like, have your war with the surface. Like, and I will go on and I will, like, be at your side. But you just have to convince these other kings to kind of give up their leadership to do what you want. So we have Manta, who is just kind of on his kind of ship, and so all of a sudden we have the Atlanteans, who is to kind of come from behind with their ship and is going to tell Manta that, like, here's the payment for what you have gone on and done. And so we, of course, have Manta that doesn't want to seek payment for what he has done. He wants to seek out Aquaman. Like, feed me Aquaman, and, like, you won't have to pay me a cent. So later on, we go and we have, of course, Orm, who is to deliver Mantis much more efficient equipment to try and take down Aquaman, but that will happen sometime later. So all of a sudden we have Arthur and we have Tom that's kind of just kind of driving off. All of a sudden this big massive wave of ocean is to come their way, this big massive tidal wave, and go on to kind of wipe out both Tom and Curry in their vehicle. And so all of a sudden we have it where Mira is going on and like helping out, like try to save them, because Mira is basically stalking them at this point. And she's trying to fan these kind of waves from kind of coming further into Tom and Arthur, so of course Tom can continue to like survive this. So all of a sudden we find out that Tom is like he basically drowned into this water, and so now they're trying to figure out a way to like CPR him and try to get this water out. And so Mira is to go and use her powers to kind of get all this water out of this guy's system, and Tom is to kind of choke up the rest of the water. And so Arthur's just like, okay, like, so he's back alive. And so Arthur is just like, fine, like, I'll go with you, like, I'll do whatever you need me to do, even though like he just has some like reservations on his own, just like so we go on and we of course have Arthur that is to go with Mira to Atlantis. And so we have Mira that is to go in her ship to make it to Atlantis. I'm like, these people can swim, right? Like, these people could technically swim to Atlantis. They could breathe underwater, but like, why do they need a car? But then also we have Aquaman that mentions, it's like, well, like, that they also have this like Atlantean bridge also, which I'm like, that doesn't make sense either. But like there's like this weird like we have to have like a number of cars and vehicles and whatever, like as if we have to have uh like kind of certain kind of animals that of course uh certain characters are to ride on. Let me take 1 second for a minute to just pause right here. Thylosaurus, I believe, is the thing that Orm was riding off of. Like it was just bugging me, and I was like, well, I didn't do the research of that because I'm like, why? So, but like every once in a while, like little specifics about that just kind of bug me. So Arthur and Mira make their way, of course, to or through this bridge. And Mira is mentioning how there might be a number of people that try to sneak into Atlantis, and there is kind of precautions to be done if people are to sneak into Atlantis. I'm like, that might be really interesting for a sequel if we start to have a number of like characters that are trying to like take down Atlantis, and we'll kind of see what their defenses are if that ever happens. That would be kind of cool. So I have a feeling that eventually there's going to be like some kind of big massive battle happening in Atlantis to where Atlantis might go on and just eventually get wrecked, and that might be cool. So both Arthur and Mira are to make their way into Atlantis, and they're going to speak with Volko. And so Arthur and Volko, like, of course, have this past, and so it's like it's great to kind of see them again, kind of thing, is what they're kind of saying between one another. And so Volko kind of lays out this plan that Volko, of course, wants Arthur to go after the, of course, this the Trident of Atlan. Weirdly, we of course have Arthur that is telling Volko, it's like, well, I already have a trident. Why do I need another one? And Volko is like, well, there's a difference between that trident and this one. Because, of course, this trident was to have been held by the very first king of Atlantis, when King of Atlantis was actually to be on land, or when Atlantis was still on land. And so we go on and we showcase Atlantis as it is to have been on land, and we have a number of these kind of mechanical advancements and stuff like that going into, of course, this place. And so we have at one moment where we, of course, have the king who is to go on and try to use his trident to use it possibly as some kind of power source. And all of a sudden, things end up going haywire, all of a sudden causing this big, like, electromagnetic pulse of an electric wave that goes on and hits all of the mechanical parts of the ship, and all of a sudden is to start to have Atlantis crumble and fall within the waters, all of a sudden forcing a number of Atlanteans to change, adapt, or become trenched creatures, or to go on and just kind of become who eventually they become at some point. So we of course have Volko, who is to have this ancient recording cylinder that is to possibly tell them exactly where to go to retrieve this trident. And so Arthur is, of course, asking Volko, it's like, well, like, what does the ancient recording say? And they're like, we don't know, because the language is so, like, it's such a dead language, it's so old that we're not quite sure. So Arthur is just like, great, thumbs up. This is great. So all of a sudden, because of course we have it where uh, we have Orm going on and talking to King Mirius, and Mara is to run off, and so King Mirius is telling Orm, like, hey, if you're gonna go on and retrieve Mira, like, do not harm her. Like, just kind of capture her and take her in, but, like, do not harm her. So, we, of course, have the Atlanteans that are to, of course, find Arthur within his hideout. And so, Volko and Mara are kind of hiding out because Volko was telling Mara, it's like, well, hey, like, if you are to be seen here, like this will say that we're traitors and we'll be kind of prisoned off. So we're gonna just kind of hide here, and so Mara is to, of course, take the cylinder, and so Arthur is starting to take down a number of these Atlantean soldiers and these Atlantean commandos, and he's starting to dismantle them, and so which is kind of really cool. I really like this scene. So Aquaman decks all these guys, and so we of course have both Arthur and we have both Mira that of course desperately need to leave this area to go on and no wait. Yeah, no, then wait. Yeah, yeah. So eventually Arthur does get captured. He ends up getting captured, and of course he has to battle out Orm because we of course have Arthur that is going to challenge Orm for the rights of the throne. Because we eventually have it where Arthur is to eventually get caught and eventually be taken in, and so Arthur, of course, is chained up and he's kind of swimming very close to Orm as Orm is kind of talking about their mother and how their mother was killed. And Arthur is just kind of very angry at Orm, realizing how much of a of a dick that this guy was. So Aquaman is challenging him for the rights of the throne, and so of course we have like Aquaman trying to get on this like armored gear, but he's like, I don't want to wear this. I don't want to wear that. So we have Volko that, of course, is telling Aquaman that Aquaman is no match for Orm. Like, this is his bread and butter. This is his element. Like, Orm has been training for years in the water to face off against Aquaman here. And so there's no way for Arthur to win. So Arthur is going out into this arena to face off against Orm. And at first we're thinking that this is just to be some kind of competition between these two. But we end up that it is more to be like a fight to the death or an execution. So we have them consistently decking one another, fighting one another out. Aquaman is being booed by everybody, and they call him the half-breed. So it's kind of like, of course, Thor Ragnarok, where, of course, we have it where, like, Jeff Goldblum is calling Thor sparklers and all that kind of jazz. And he's calling his place Asgard and all this other stuff. So we have Aquaman going on and continuing to try to fight Orm. And so it is this kind of very back and forth kind of matchup. It is really interesting. Eventually, uh, we have Arthur that is to kind of lose his helmet. And so we continue to have this kind of back and forth thing. And once Mira is to realize that this is to be like a fight to the death, Mira is to go on and take her ship, which is to weirdly just be called the Mira ship. Like, hence why, like, there's a lot about this movie that doesn't actually have, like, specifics, or there's not, like, a really title of anything or whatever. Like, so I didn't really do as much research as I probably would, because a lot of things don't exactly have specific names throughout this film, and so I couldn't have been bothered to want to go on and try to research something just for it to find out that there is no real specifics or whatever, even to the point of me not even actually having the name of Black Manta, because I would just like to call him Black Manta because that should be easy enough. So Aquaman goes into Mira's car, and so, or Mira's ship, and so they go on and they swim off in their ship. And so now we have everybody chasing after Mira's ship. And so Mira and Arthur are to try and look like they had died within this oceaned lava with Mira's ship, as actually Arthur and Mira are swimming away to, of course, try to get away from both Orm, making them assume that they're dead. And so Aquaman, because he can go on to talk to fish, he, of course, is to have this one whale open up its mouth and have both Aquaman and both Mira kind of sit into this whale's mouth while Orm is kind of looking to see if they are dead, and eventually the whale will tell them that the coast is clear. Because we have one moment that I did technically forget about, where we had Arthur who was to go to this aquarium, and all of a sudden we had a number of these bullied kids that were kind of giving Arthur a hard time. And so all of a sudden Arthur is going on and talking to these fish and just kind of saying like, hey, is everything okay? Like, are you guys hungry? Yeah, me too, right? So all of a sudden these bullies get Arthur a hard time about him going on and speaking to these fish, and all of a sudden we have this one shark who's just kind of smashing against this glass. And so Arthur is to go on and tell these fish like, hey, just cool out, just chill out, I'm okay. And so like the shark stops banging against this glass and just kind of leaves everything good enough alone. So like, I did like that scene. Like, it is kind of a cool scene. And it kind of like showcases that Arthur is, like, if anything, has always had this ability to speak with fish, which I guess is a rare thing because no one else really can. So after we go on and we have Aquaman and we have Mira who are to make it back on the shore, we of course have Arthur that said the main reason why they were to go into that whale's mouth was because, of course, he ended up seeing the movie Pinocchio and he thought it was a good idea. So both Aquaman and Mira, like, Mira's decide that they need to go on to this desert called the Sahara Desert to make their way to this place called the Hall of Armory. So we have, of course, where both of these characters are making their way to the Sahara Desert. And so we have it where Mira is kind of using this tracker device to figure out where this Hall of Armory is. And so we have Arthur that's mentioning to Mary, it's like this is just a wasteland. And Mary is like, well, like land is just a wasteland. Like you guys have just kind of wasted your resources and so on and so forth. And so Aquaman is just kind of frustrated with Mira because it's like, dude, we're going nowhere. Like we're like, there's nothing here. I don't know what, like, I don't know what you're tracking, but it isn't anything. All of a sudden, we have Arthur who slips and falls and is starting to slide his way down through this location, and Mira follows him into the Hall of Armory. So now, of course, we have it where Mira is to take this ancient reading cylinder, and she is to place it upon this item that looks to be the right uh, location for this thing, the cylinder. And all of a sudden, like, it's not working. And Mira realizes, like, oh yeah, like, this place, like, it would have water from before. So Mira uses her power to kind of suck the water out of course, uh, Arthur's forehead, and is to just kind of plop it onto this device, and it perfectly works. And so we of course have Arthur, who's just like, we could have peed on it. Like that would have worked perfectly as well. And Mira's like, I don't want to touch a freaking cylinder that has your pee on it, you. So all of a sudden, this cylinder powers up, and we of course have the previous king of Atlanta, or Atlantis, that is going on and having this whole speech talking about uh, the trident of Atlanta and this and that and so on and so forth. To even where me, I kind of tuned out like Arthur did, and so all of a sudden we go on and we have Mira that is to grab the cylinder and she's to break it so Orm doesn't follow in their footsteps. And Arthur's like, well, wait a minute, like, shouldn't we have written all that down? Like, what if we had to memorize all that? And Mira's just like, really? Like, do you really think that, like I memorized it, I don't know about you? And he's like, yeah, like I memorized the whole thing. She's like, what did you memorize? And he's like, something trident. So all of a sudden this bottle just appears out of nowhere, and they kind of grab this bottle from this ground, and they're like, okay. So they pop this cork out of this bottle to find out that they need to go to this specific location that of course to be called the village of Eris in Sicily, which of course is to be Italy, because we have a number of people that are all speaking Italian, because of course for me, I like to watch movies with subtitles. So immediately we just have a lot of people that at some points would just say Italian words. I'm like, oh, this must be in Sicily somewhere, obviously, because I know my right. No, so I don't know about nothing, but I just research enough to seem somewhere ballparkingly that I technically know what I'm talking about at some points. But what's Black Manta's real name? I don't remember. Let me know in the comments below what actually Black Manta's name is, if they say it somewhere, because I didn't pay attention. So and plus also that'll help me get comments on the video, and I really appreciate it. So we of course now get to this point where we have Arthur going on, or no, Arthur. We have Manta going on, and he is starting to get Atlantean tech from Orm, so that way he can go on and try a second attempt at trying to take down Aquaman. So Orm, of course, in his watery hologram, is talking to Manta, because I guess we of course have it where Orm, I guess, can't actually be able to make it onto the surface. Hence why we just kind of never see him outside of Atlantis, but I guess also like he's not wearing this like protective gear or whatever to breathe. But anyways, pushing on. So we have it where like the Atlantean commandos soldiers are giving Black Manta this tech, and so we find out that he has this kind of laser gun, this hydro gun or hydro gun, and so reference to Captain America, right? Because everything is to be like hydro gun for some reason. It's not like hydro gun or it's not like plasma gun. You would have thought that that would have been a thing, but I don't know. It is what it is. So we have Manta that, of course, to use this one gun that is to like generate these like laser beams as if he's like dark side. And immediately once like I see this character, I'm like, oh, so this is kind of this feels like a dark side kind of character, but that's kind of his big weapon. So Manta is to go on and try to like, and this is like an Iron Man, Tony Stark kind of moment, where Manta goes on and is trying to fidget with his helmet, and all of a sudden he realizes that it goes off by accident, and the helmet just messes up. And so Manta's like, well, we're going to need a bigger helmet. And I'm like, oh, okay, is this like we're going to need a bigger boat from Jaws? So we go on, and so Manta concocts this new gear to go up against Aquaman here. So we're now in Sicily. So these characters are going on and trying to figure out what they're doing here. We of course have Mira that is grabbed these things of roses and she starts eating the tips of them, and all of a sudden Aquaman is to start eating the tips of these roses, and I'm just like, okay, like you guys could actually eat normal food, right? And so Mira is to spot the fact as some rando kid is giving her some book to read that's coincidentally Pinocchio. And Aquaman comes back to Mira, and Mira's like, hey, like, so you just got the idea of what to do with our mission by reading some child's book. And of course we have Arthur is like, wait a minute, like there's a book called Pinocchio. I just watched the movie. Like I would go on and probably say the same thing because I'm a very visual person, but I'm also just like I would always go on and lazily say it's like, hey, like it's great that this book exists, but I'll wait for the movie. Like there's some times where there's books where there's too freaking massive of a thing. It's like 3, 4, like thousands of pages of sometimes a book, and I'm just like, I don't have that kind of time. And plus, also, I'd be a very slow reader, and plus, I'm a very visual person, anyways. And there's a lot of times where I just couldn't retain a lot of stuff that happens in a lot of books. Hence, why whenever I was to read any Harry Potter books, I'm like, I can't retain like all of this. I can probably retain like half of it, so I can kind of like remember bits and pieces, but not the thing as a whole. So we then go on and of course have it where this is kind of like a national treasure kind of moment for this movie where we consistently have it where it's like that will lead to another clue, that will lead to another clue. So Arthur is to go on and realize that there, of course, is to be this clue that is to help them figure out where to go next. And so we, of course, go on and have all these statued men who are to be very important to Italy. And so we, of course, have Arthur with this bottle, and because the clue is that this bottle will kind of help them see where, of course, they are to head next. And so Arthur goes on and looks inside the bottle to see there is some kind of mapping thing at the end of it. So he's like, aha. So Arthur is to now get the riddle where it's like you have to go on and find the true king, and he will lead you to where to go, of course, next. So we have it where Arthur is to go on and plop down this bottle into the hands of this person, and is to kind of see through it like easily because this head conveniently has this like place where you kind of actually see through it. So that of course leads them to yet another location, and they're like, okay, great, like, so we'll go on and we'll get this, we'll get to this. And so that leads our characters, of course, to now have a big fight out with Black Manta and a number of Atlantean commandos. And we have a really funny part where we have one Atlantean commando who eventually is to lose the ability to like have his helmet not help him breathe, so he has to dunk his head into this toilet water to where he can go on like, like I feel relieved. And so it's like, yeah, I know how long that's gonna last, but okay, sure, enjoy that toilet water. So we have it where Aquaman is fighting it out with Black Manta, and Mera is fighting out with the Atlantean commandos, and she's fighting on rooftop. And if I'm to always make the joke about Batman Begins, where it's like, they're fighting on rooftop, where it's like the one guy is saying on like where the Batmobile, he's flying on rooftop. I always make that joke for some goofy reason. When anybody is like fighting on rooftop, especially if it's a DC movie, that would make the best sense. So we have, of course, Black Manta that is kind of outbesting Aquaman here, kind of doing his blast that, of course, is to burn Aquaman's arms. And so we have both these characters who are going on and crashing through this one old lady's house. And like, this is probably the most priceless part about this movie, where we have this like old lady who's just like watching on, and she's like, "Oh my god, you're like breaking through my like, really?" So we have it where, of course, Aquaman is to tell Black Manta, it's like, I told you to not make a habit of going against me, because he's just going to beat the crap out of him. So we go on and we have Mera that is to use the ability to take all the liquid from all these wine bottles that, of course, are behind her, because I guess she's kind of in this like winery place, and she uses all of these wine bottles to create all these spikes to jab into the bodies of these Atlantean commandos and kill the rest of these Atlantean commandos off, as well as Aquaman is fighting off against Black Mantis, and he goes on and use these like these chained like metal ball things that he is to kind of rip from the ground, and he is to kind of spin them around and smack against Black Manta. And all of a sudden we of course have these metaled chained items that goes on and breaks Black Manta's head and forces him to kind of fall backwards, and is to fall into some ocean somewhere, where he's just kind of sifting away, where we eventually see him in the end credit scene go on and be retrieved by some scientist who is trying to figure out Black Manta's technology. And we, of course, have Black Manta telling this guy, like, Dr. Stephen Shin, to, like, hey, like, Don't mess with that because it's gonna like whoop, like it's gonna fire on you. So we of course have Doctor Stephen Shin that's working with Black Manta, and Black Manta is just like, well, hey, like I'm only in it to go and find Aquaman, and so we of course have Black Manta go and throw this knife at, of course, the newspaper of like, who is Aquaman? And so like that's the end credit scene. That's the only end credit scene for Aquaman. So technically, Black Manta is coming back whenever the sequel is to allow us to say so. So all of a sudden, we end up having it since, of course, uh, we have it where Aquaman is, of course, to be so injured that Mira is to commandeer some boat and is to use these certain sea items, like seaweed items, to try and heal Arthur's wounds. And so Arthur tells Mira, "Did you just steal some boat?" And Mira's like, "Oh, so these boats aren't just for like anyone to use?" And Aquaman's like, "No." Like so yeah, so we just go on and have these two just kind of swim away. So Orm is to go on and try to talk to Ken Rico and try and get the fishermen uh, to work with him. And like they call them fishermen because these are actual like people that are to be like human-sized fish. It looks kind of cool. So we go on into this thing and we have Orm who's talking to King Rico, and King Rico wants nothing to do with working with Orm. And so Orm is just like, well, okay. And so Orm just goes on and kills this king, and is to basically tell his daughter, who is to now be the runner up for these people, Scales, a girl named Scales. Orm is to tell her, it's like, yeah, like since you're the new queen now, you're going to be working with me. And so she's just like, okay, all right. Like, I guess I won't say no to him, or he's just going to continue to kill off my family until, like, he finds somebody that he can work with. So, we have King Nurum that, of course, is reminding Orm that no matter what he's going to do, eventually, like the Brine King is also going to be very difficult to persuade him also. And Orm is just like whatever. Like I'm gonna like whoever I'm gonna need to talk to, whatever. Like I want this war to happen. So we go on here and we have it where Orm is talking to Volko, and Orm, of course, is to tell Volko, it's like, well, you know what? I knew all along that you were betraying me, and you were training the surface dweller without, like, behind my back, and Orm just wanted to know why, and Volko is just like, well, he's the rightful heir. Like, I'm sorry, like, and he's also like twice the king that you are, and so like Orm is just like, you know what? Take him away and give him somewhere with a view. And so it's kind of funny because Volko kind of at the end of this movie, like Volko kind of returns that favor, which is just kind of funny. So here is probably gonna be hands down the most fascinating part about this movie. So we have both Aquaman and we have both Mira who are making their way further and further into the trench. And so now we have them having to face off against these cannibalistic race of ocean dwelling creatures, which of course are just to be called the trench. So, best part about this movie, hands down, like to me, there's kind of bits and pieces that does kind of feel like it's coming from like a Power Rangers movie somewhere. Like if you go on, you kind of watch like Power Rangers Turbo. Like there's a moment where like the Power Rangers are trying to make it to like the Bermuda Triangle, and all of a sudden we have these like monstrous creatures that are trying to make it onto their boat and fight out the Power Rangers. Kind of feels like the same thing at some points, weirdly. I'm sure there's probably a better comparison somewhere, like the Creature of the Black Lagoon or something like that. But, anyways, so. And there's some kind of weird, goofy comparisons at some point to just Power Rangers weirdly in this film. I don't know why. But, anyways, so the Power Rangers movie is not the Power Ranger show. So, anyways, because we have like a lot of walking being done in this film also. So, a lot of trying to figure out things and a lot of, So, we have both Mira and we have both Aquaman trying to fight off these cannibalistic underground ocean dweller things. Long video, I apologize for how many times I'm moving and maneuvering. So, the coolest thing is these trench characters, and I hope eventually there's at some point where they kind of bring them back or just kind of showcase them a little bit more. That's kind of the fascinating thing about this story. And so all of a sudden, it seems like they're trying to fight them off, but they start to get outnumbered. So they go on and they're hiding in the boat, and these monsters are just crashing through these windows. And so both Arthur and Mira decide that they're going to get these like flares out, or these road flares out, and they start crackling them. And it's kind of funny because why would I call them road flares when technically they're not used on a road? But that's kind of the easiest thing that I can go on and compare these two. So Arthur is kind of realizing that this light is to be these guys' weaknesses because they live so much in the dark. And so now we weirdly have it where both Aquaman and Mira are jumping off of this boat, trying to swim their way to, of course, where this trident could be held. And weirdly enough, we have it to where this flare is to, of course, not easily fizzle out within this water. But, like, I guess that might actually work as a thing? I don't know. I don't know how durable those kind of flares are, but that just kind of seems absurd that it works so well underwater. So we eventually have it where both Aquaman and Mira are to swim so far as to eventually make it onto this weird place that, of course, is to held Atlanta. And we kind of have Atlanta, or Nicole Kidman's character, that is to kind of seem like how Michelle Pfeiffer was in Ant-Man and the Wasp, where we kind of build her up as this character that is kind of having this kind of like all like armored character, and then she kind of removes her helmet and we're immediately thinking like, oh, it has to be like Nicole Kidman because it can't be anybody else. And so all of a sudden we have Arthur, who is to see his mother, and they kind of hug it out. And so now we of course have Arthur, who has to make it to this trident, and only he and he alone can go and make it to here. So we of course have his mother, who's telling Arthur that this trident is kind of being kept from a creature called Karathan. Kind of like the Kraken kind of character from Clash of the Titans, a big, massive looking monstrous being that, of course, to keep this, keep anybody at bay. And so we have Arthur making his way to this trident. And we, of course, have Karathan, that is just kind of smashing and swinging and trying to keep Arthur at bay, going on and consistently mocking him, saying like, "Oh yeah, you're not gonna make it, you half breed. Like you aren't gonna. There's no way like uh, you're gonna be able to do this compared to anyone else." And so all of a sudden we have Arthur who uses his ability to talk to the Karathan, and so she's like, "Oh, like so you heard everything that I said. You can listen to me. You can talk to me. Like I've never seen that happen in quite some time." And so like, hey, like since you can talk to me, like by all means, go on and try to see if you can go and pull this trident out of this man's cold dead corpse. And like, hey, and if you can't, then I'll go and I'll eat you because I haven't eaten anybody in a really long time. So Arthur goes on and is to, of course, take the power of this staff or this trident and is to eventually become the Aquaman, and is to don the costume that we are to really just see here. Let me know in the comments below because I think, like, for me, I actually liked the green costume that, of course, he was wielding in the Justice League movie. And, like, I know, like, there's a blue one that's kind of coming up in the more recent, like, attire, gear, whatever. Like, to me, I don't know, I think I liked the first introduction to this character with his kind of green costume on. And it kind of just sucked that they kind of went right back to the traditional, like, Aquaman thing. But it feels like they're adjusting or changing or tweaking this character to try to look different or tweakingly different or whatever. So now we go on and we have Orm that of course is going to fight out the Brine army. The Brine army. To really just have this war being fought between these two, because we have where Brine is not going to give this up easily, and I'm sure Brine is being aware of kind of what had gone on with the other kingdoms. So Brine is getting a war together, and we have like the Brine people that are kind of very much like crustacean, like kind of crab, kind of lobster, kind of people, where it seems like they've gone on and adjusted to this kind of lifestyle. So we have Orm kind of blasting his way through any number of these people, and so Orm is to eventually find the Brine King. And we, of course, have it where Brine is just like, well, hey, like, you can go on and rule over my people, but you'll never get my allegiance. So we have it where, of course, we find out that Orm is now to be really dubbed the Ocean Master at this point, because he, of course, is to just kind of win over everybody or to kill anybody off who is to kind of no say to him. So now, kind of catching everybody off guard, we have Aquaman, who, of course, comes back with Karathan, and Karathan is just kind of dominating against all of these other kingdoms, just kind of smashing up against all of these characters and kind of decking them all down. And so, and if that isn't working, we have Aquaman, who's using the power of this staff to have all of the sharks who are kind of having everybody, like all these Atlanteans kind of riding on top of these sharks. Aquaman is taking control of all these sharks and now having all, like, the sharks fight off one another and taking down all these Atlanteans, and it's really, really cool imagery. So our Aquaman, throughout all this mix of all these people, are to eventually find Mira, as Mira had, of course, been trying to talk to her father to convince him about what they should do here. Because Arthur is to have this shield, or to have this trident, and technically he should be the heir of this throne. And so we have, of course, King Varius, or my bad, King Nereus, who of course is say like, well, if he has a trident, he's our king. So like, hey guys, let's not fight him, and like, let's go and try to support him. As now we have, of course, Mira telling Arthur that, of course, Orm was to fight Arthur in kind of like in Orm's bread and butter, and Orm's kind of kind of place. So it's time to trade up, and now Arthur needs to force Orm to fight on land, so that way Orm can be taken down here, or Ocean Master can be taken down, because now he technically has that name. So we have, of course, both Aquaman and Ocean Master fighting on top of this ship. And I'm like, man, for all the fighting that they're technically doing on top of the ship, like, this looks really difficult for them to be kind of doing all of this. And like, I would just be like, man, like, especially the one spot where like they're like sliding on this ship, I'm like, man, somebody could possibly get like cut up pretty badly from kind of like sliding all the way through there, because I'm sure whatever they're standing on like doesn't look like the nicest or softest ground anyways, unless it's all like via this CG'd environment anyways, which I'm sure that's probably what it is. So we go on, we have these two characters that are fighting it out, and so of course we have it where we have Arthur learning what he had learned from Volko, which is to be that kind of trident maneuver where he's kind of spinning it back and forth. And Ocean Master is trying to smack through, of course, Arthur here. And he, of course, can't get through. And so now we just have it where Arthur is, or Aquaman is clocking freaking Ocean Man, or Ocean Master, and he's consistently telling him to yield, because this guy is in a losing battle. Like, Aquaman just has the trident against, of course, Ocean Master, and everything else. So, like, there's no way for him to win now. So Ocean Master does not wield, and Ocean Master is telling Aquaman, it's like, hey, we don't show mercy, so why should you? And Aquaman's like, well, I don't think that you're aware of it, like, I'm not exactly one of you. So, like, I will give you mercy as if you wouldn't. So, we kind of have this moment where Aquaman does not want to kill his brother, and eventually wants to try and at some point like talk to him somewhere down the road, and maybe at some point have them kind of see eye to eye, or possibly maybe work together in some sequel when there is a bigger threat that is going to happen somewhere down the road, or maybe Ocean Master is going to sneak away after he goes on and helps his brother. And maybe this will be like a Thor Loki kind of situation somewhere down the road. We could hope at some point. So, because I'm still waiting for any number of like other kind of characters coming down the road to kind of build up a kind of fun Aquaman world of things. So we'll see how that plays out. So, we of course have Atlanta kind of show up, and Orm is so, like, very relieved that Atlanta, of course, to be there, and Atlanta is kind of convincing Orm to just kind of like, hey, like, Like, let's kind of forget about all this war and like let's just kind of hug it out. And so Orn, who is just so happy to have seen his mother, is to just kind of easily just go and like, yeah, like whatever you guys need me to do, like I'll go and I'll be imprisoned and whatever. Or we might eventually see that Ocean Man, or Ocean, what do I keep saying, Ocean Man, Ocean Master had gone on to like take down these soldiers and then kind of swim off. We could probably see that also, where Ocean Master didn't go so easily into imprisonment. We could see anything play out. So Volko, of course, is telling these guys to take Orm away and that give him some place where he, of course, has a view. So they're going off, and now we have it where, of course, where Arthur is to cement that he is the king of Atlantis. Everybody's like, yeah, new king of Atlantis, great. And so we, of course, have it where Atlanta is just like, well, yeah, like you're the best of both worlds. Like, a lot of us would go on and see that, like, that like the land and the sea are two different things, but Aquaman is the only one to see it as one and the same. So we of course have it where finally Atlanta is to make her way back to Tom Curry, and they have this nice little kissing out moment. And so we go on and have Arthur, who's to go on and kind of do whatever his next duties is as king, to go on to sequel and so on and so forth. So with that said, because I've already talked about the end credit scene, and oh my god, this took an hour and a half to go on and do, so that means I'm going to have to fuse on some stuff together, which is perfectly fine, because at the end of the day, now I can say that I have Aquaman reviewed, which is great, because really, it's good to like have these one-off things where I can just go on and be like, yeah, like I finally did that one, like that's finally done. Because I had reviewed this movie once before, but I had like fused it with some other movie, which I don't think people probably remember past XYZ X amount of time. So really with that, like, yeah, I'll leave it at that. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.